Hello, hello. Hi, Whitney.
Howdy.
Hello, welcome everyone.
Hello.
Sorry for the background music there. I really wish we had more options, and I just don't want to, violate any sort of copyright laws. But welcome everyone. How's everyone doing today?
Freaking
Pretty,
amazing.
pretty well. Getting used to Modern Warfare 3, which Marino you should be have downloaded by now, right?
Soon, soon. I'll get to it. I mean, I've got to get through some stuff today, but yeah, I think I might.
If you don't start downloading soon, it will take you forever, I would say.
Yeah, you really got to have your priorities straight.
Yeah, all right. I'll get to it. Maybe let me pause this space for a few minutes and let me get to downloading.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm playing and spacing at the same time.
Ah.
Just playing and spacing.
Love it, love it. All right, well, welcome everyone. We've got a KubeCon recap to go. It's interesting. I felt like I was at KubeCon, but I also felt like I wasn't because it felt like a blur. I started on Saturday with Rejects, went to the Colos, went to KubeCon, and it just was like just moved so quickly that I honestly don't recall what happened. So that's why I kind of cheated and brought you all along so I can start capturing some notes and getting ready for my recap. Welcome everyone. So why don't we just do some quick introductions and as you're introducing yourself, just tell us a little bit about your KubeCon experience, and we'll start with Tim. Tim, let's go.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tim Banks. I am a lead developer advocate with Dell Technologies here. My KubeCon experience was both as like a sponsor and general attendee, but not a speaker. All in all, it was smaller, but I kind of liked it. The conversations were a lot more meaningful. It felt like, and there was definitely more booze to go around during the group call.
Awesome. Robert, I see you next. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Robert Serchia, Director of Community Evangelism at SUSE. I would say that it was a blur. It was smaller than Amsterdam, but it was still that fast paced. Just kind of it just seems like it was over so fast. So, but a lot of good conversations. I wasn't on a speaker, so I was mostly on the sponsor side.
Nice, nice. Whitney.
I heard that in Paris it's going to be 4 days of KubeCon instead of 3 days. Can anyone corroborate? So maybe it was fast because there's literally one less day. I don't know, or maybe the other one's long. I'm relatively new to the tech space, so this is, I think, maybe my fourth KubeCon ever, and it was a complete blur and as I'm sure many people will repeat, like it's easy. I think a lot of us have come to the conclusion that we focus on the human connection and then we'll watch the talks later in recordings because the human connection is something that you can't duplicate. And it's like, oh, I'll catch talks later. So I was running from one thing to another and I didn't see any talks except for my own, but I made lots of wonderful connections and it was a great time.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't even catch any. Maybe I caught like 3 or 4 talks total, but you're right. I mean, with such a busy week, it's very difficult to try and navigate the entire show floor and then try and find the room that you're trying to get to. And then, as you're walking, you'll encounter, 20 different people, and it's like a 5-minute conversation with each, and then you suddenly miss your talk.
I totally loaded up my schedule like and then with 20 different talks that I wanted to see. But having that scheduled now, later when the talks do go online, my schedule populate with all the talks that I wanted to see. So I still will see them, but just not live.
Awesome, awesome. All right, let's get Adriana up. Let's go, Adriana.
Hey, so this is my third KubeCon. I actually attended my first KubeCon last year in Detroit, and I was like a newly minted DevRel, didn't know anybody, felt like a total imposter. And, a year on, I'm a CNCF ambassador and had 2 talks at KubeCon, one for the Observability Day co-located event, and then one for KubeCon proper. And I agree with Whitney, like, I wanted to focus more on the human connections. I cannot sit through a talk and not fidget and not zone out. So I much prefer to catch the recordings because I can concentrate in my own way. Even if it's like walking while listening to the YouTube recording, I can concentrate a lot better. So I definitely really, really appreciated the human connection. And that was so much fun because I know a lot more people now. And it was so nice to like see people, meet people in real life that I had talked to on Zoom and meet new people. So for me, that I think that was like the most fun.
Hey, congratulations on your first KubeCon talks and welcome to the community.
Thanks.
100%. Congratulations. It's always fun to get up on stage and chat about some awesome ideas in front of hundreds of people. So I'm with you there. I will just say we are at limit, at capacity for speakers. So eventually I hope some folks cycle off over the next, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes or so, and so we can bring more folks on. But let me pass it along to Michael.
Hi, thanks. I hope you can hear me. I haven't used Twitter Spaces in a while. Yeah, to be honest, I would love to clone myself and support all the speakers because I think the value being added with the content, with the different new technology ideas, this should be valued more. So I would love to find a way to learn and also make human connections and kind of visit the solution showcase and talk to everyone, which I did more this year and trying to introduce my friends to other friends and also finally meeting friends after attending my fourth KubeCon in person. Still I haven't met everyone, so sorry if I couldn't make the time. And I think even if it was a long week for me because I attended rejects over the weekend, I think it was totally worth it. And I would recommend for someone who wants to attend KubeCon, take the co-located events with you, attend rejects, dive into the community, and get introduced into many great humans. If you don't understand technology or like abbreviations, take notes, research later, ask your friends, and next year you're coming back and know a lot more. Like I learned a lot about AI and observability and tracing in that regard, which inspires me for my future talks, for future conversations, content strategy, and whatnot.
That's an awesome perspective, Michael. Honestly, Michael takes the right approach and really focuses in on the humans, just like Adriana and Whitney. And that's important because as you make more connections and network, you start to grow yourself, you start to grow your network, you start to grow yourself in terms of how you can accelerate your learning because you're never going to be able to know everything. But the reality is if you know people, right, you network with people, especially at KubeCon, you can start leaning into them. And that's one of the main reasons I go. Right? Yeah, of course, we're there for our work and our main jobs and whatnot, but those connections are so damn important. All right, Keith, why don't you introduce yourself?
Happy to. Thanks, Marina. I'm Keith. I'm an engineering lead at Microsoft, leading our our upstream service mesh investments. This was my third KubeCon. My first one was Detroit last year, and yeah, I agree with a lot of what's already been said. It went by extremely quickly. Um, there were a lot of interesting talks I was able to make too, especially those in the kind of L7 networking space. I attended the CO Day co-located event. But yeah, I have to echo what folks have already said. Is that the people element, the ability to connect and have technical and personal discussions with folks in person was just, I mean, it was electrifying. It was great to be a part of, and yeah, looking forward to chat about some of the things that we learned or takeaways and such with this great group of people.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Keith. All right, Maurizio, let's go.
Hey, Marino. Yeah. So Mauricio Salatino here. I'm an engineer, and I can describe KubeCon as intense. It was a very intense week for me. I was blown away by the collocated events. But yeah, for at least from an engineering perspective, it's like it's your mind gets overloaded with information. There are tons of things happening, and of course, for like an introvert, it gets really difficult to get in touch with all that people that it's there. So it was pretty intense for me, but I definitely enjoyed it. I learned a bunch of things in this edition, and one of those things that struck me the most was the amount of developers that were attending this time. So I'm looking forward to see more and more developers in these kind of like conferences.
Maurizio, you're so humble. Like, are you not going to talk about your platform engineering on Kubernetes book?
I'm not going to do that now. No, no, no. Thank you for mentioning it.
So, fun fact, Maurizio had a book signing, and the line I feel like was out the conference center because it's such a good book, and I didn't get a chance to pick it up in that line, but I ended up just ordering it because I couldn't wait. But in reading it initially, there's a lot of good value in terms of understanding the basics of platform engineering, so go check it out. All right, Bart, let's go.
All right, let's go. This is my 5th KubeCon, and I feel like each time I go, I get better and better results in the sense of a reminder of how wonderful our community is, how supportive people are, because it's a very intense week. It's very tiring, but knowing that there are people that are there for you is very reassuring. At the same time, there's just not enough. I think I completely agree with the idea about getting a clone because there's just not enough time to go to talks to see all the people that you want to see. There are people who are in this call right now who I was hoping to be able to hang out with in person and wasn't able to, so I need to move that over to Paris or future KubeCons. I feel like I consider myself to be very lucky to be part of this community, particularly as a technical outsider who suffered a lot from imposter syndrome in the beginning and still do every now and again. But I think every KubeCon is just a reminder of how rock solid the connections are between the people who are there, as well as the people who aren't, for whatever reason that they can't make it. And I really think that it's a phenomenal thing that's very difficult to explain to folks that are from outside the ecosystem. When I try to talk to my partner or my family about this, if they see just like, oh, it's just like, yeah, people are doing talks and there's, it's kind of like a trade show with companies trying to explain, the things that they do. But I understand that at face value, that might be what people see, but there's so much more to that. And running into people who you really love and care about and the depth of those connections, despite the fact that it might be tricky to have the time that you like to have, which is why I think things like rejects are great. Also got to participate in Kuberoki for the 2nd time, and that's a wonderful initiative, whether you like to sing or not in front of people or dress up like a hot dog like Lewis from Chain Guard did. But I really think that the beauty of KubeCon is you get to design your experiences in a lot of ways, being proactive, whether it's the talks that you go to or don't go to. I'm also kind of like Adriana. I also have ADHD. So for me, sitting through a 30-minute session is tough. Moderating 2 panels was tough enough and not wanting to move around the whole time. But I just really go back to the magic that it provides. And I just feel really lucky to be a part of it and can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, on that note, the CFP for KubeCon in Paris is due November 26th, so better get to it. And the colos, I believe, are closing off I'm actually looking that up for y'all right now, but it's closing off pretty soon. I think it's December 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. And I'll be honest. I feel like the colos are probably the best place to drop in a topic and a talk, and I feel that way because KubeCon as a conference is very competitive. I mean, you have so many people submitting talks, and at the same time, the folks that attend your talks, you get a wide array of audiences that show up. But when you think about something like an ArgoCon, or you think about something like an Istio Day or a CiliumCon, these are very focused conferences where, as long as you sprinkle in an element of that particular theme and you load it up or surround it by some of your own ideas and technologies, it has a higher likelihood of getting accepted. And so that's why I try to focus most of my efforts to those events as well, because they're great events and you've got some great folks that show up. The rooms are always packed. So take a look at those if you're thinking about submitting. Who haven't I called up? Boo. Let's go.
Hello, thanks for having me on. Marino, for folks who haven't met me yet, my name is Boo. I'm a community evangelist with F5 NGINX, and this was my first KubeCon. So last year I missed it. I've only been in community for 2 years, but last year I couldn't make it and wasn't at KubeCon EU yet, although now I'm going to start asking my management if I can get out to that. But yeah, the human side of it was super important for me. Like all these people that I haven't met in person yet I chat with a bunch online. So super cool to meet a few of them, although I had a list. And I was telling you, Marino, when we were at the airport, I have this list of like 30 people. I'm like, oh, I'm going to totally get through this list. I'll just have like a 5-minute chat here, a 5-minute chat here. Some of those chats were like way longer than 5 minutes. Plus, I was doing all my normal work, which is content creation for our community team. So it was a whirlwind, but all of the conversations that I had were just super valuable. Like getting to kind of distinguish between, hey, what's said online, and then kind of digging into how people really feel about the way that they're doing things. In platform engineering, that came up a bunch. So all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't have been able to get all of that context online, but being in person and just chatting with people was hugely valuable for me.
The hallway track. It's always about the hallway track. Getting to know folks and hear about some of the sessions they attended is probably the most accelerated learning I've ever experienced before, and I continue to do it because it's enjoyable. Nick, you haven't gone up. Let's hear from you, man.
Hey, what's going on? Sorry, got some vacuuming in the background. Good old adulting life, right? So I'm Nick Eberts, product manager at Google, work on GKE stuff. So first of all, I was trying to count how many KubeCons I've been to. The first one was Seattle 2016, and I don't even know how to count. So it's been a long time, and I'm excited to keep going. Secondly, Chicago, one of my favorite cities. It's like, my God, if you haven't tried Duck Duck Goat and you live in Chicago, go there. As cliche as it sounds, Buddy Guys was amazing. And then the Red Monk crew put together an awesome get together at this place called Maria's Packaged Goods and Community Bar, which is fantastic. That was a great time. Yeah. So the week started for me at the Contributor Summit, which was amazing just to get to catch up with people. The human side of it, also amazing. And then it was great to see how everybody rallied around the cry for help from the SCD team. That was really cool. If you don't know, they just really were sorely lacking in contributions and posted a cry for help, and it worked out. So that was great. And then I'd love to call out the two of my good friends winning the Chop Wood Carry Water Award, Caslin Fields and Pooja Abasi. Like they both deserved it, and it was great to see them recognized. Yeah, and then like the summation of it all is I honestly, as an adult now, going to these conferences is interesting because you spend so much time, like, you're talking to customers, you're going to all these meetings, you're hallway tracking it. I actually miss just being an attendee and going to talks. I went to one talk at the end, and it was this guy from Reddit, whose name I don't remember, and he was talking about how to build Kubernetes on Nix. And it was silly, but it was amazing, and I miss it, and I wish I could find a way to get back to just being an attendee sometimes. Last thing, I would be remiss if I didn't call out, probably my favorite part was watching Bart play my guitar in the corner of the convention center. It was pretty amazing. There's a video if you haven't seen it that's floating around Twitter. Anyway, that's it for me, man.
Love it, love it. Thanks so much, Nick. And
Yeah.
let's go, Kunal. I haven't heard from you. I'm sorry, you've been bouncing on and off this space. So why don't you share, some of your own experiences of KubeCon?
Hey everyone, I'm Kunal. Thanks for having me. Work as a development manager at Sivo. Yeah, what Nick mentioned, I'd also like to attend KubeCon as an attendee once because, believe it or not, I didn't go outside the sponsor showcase at all, and I didn't attend any talks, so like really zero. And having said that, what worries me is that there's so many people I wanted to meet and talk to, but I just didn't get the time, and that's what I was there for. So it's kind of ironic. And people whom I did meet, it was just like for work, talked about a little bit of things. But then, like Michael Cade, for example, I did an interview with him, and then it also hit him as well. He said, we did the interview, we did everything, but I don't know how you're doing. I don't know what's new in life and all these things. But yeah, overall, from like company point of view, like we were sponsoring KubeCon from work point of view is really good. But individually, I don't think I made the most out of it just because of the sheer amount of, like, the scale of the conference was overwhelming for me. And this was my, like, I don't know, 7th or 8th KubeCon, and it was still overwhelming for me. Clearly, I'm doing something wrong, but yeah, maybe next one would be, and yeah, it's just too much, KubeCon. But no, it was fun, and yeah, met a lot of nice people, customers, business partners. Met a lot of nice folks who are doing some amazing work. It's always nice to see new startups coming out. Also excited for Sigboba, which is, if you don't know, Sigboba is me and Lee. We started a non-alcoholic after party. So this was our second edition, which was really good. The first one was in Amsterdam, and it's much bigger. Officially supported by the CNCF. So the next one in Paris, we'll try to do even much bigger. And yeah, no, it was really good. Sigboba was nice, but yeah, overall overwhelming, but very good.
Yeah, KubeCon and every associated event or the side events can be overwhelming if you do it all together. Like going from rejects to colos to KubeCon is a lot, and I feel like it's at the level of a reinvent. I'm not going to reinvent. I just can't handle that now after the intensity of KubeCon. But you're right. I mean, it felt a little interesting not being able to catch everyone I normally would at this event, because when I was in Amsterdam, I felt like I saw everyone, and that was fun. But this event, I felt like everyone was there, but also not there. Like I couldn't find everyone, and I couldn't explain it. And then you've got this tiredness going on as well because you have to keep going day in day in. But I appreciated that one break of having Sig Boba and not drinking that one night, because, for every night we were there, I imagine, like, I think everyone was having a good time. But that, having that one night not drinking, oh, it set me up well for the next day. So I appreciate that a lot, Kunal and Lee, who's not here at the moment. So I think I've got to everyone. There's some folks that I've been trying to bring up, but for some reason they're not joining. That's okay. Let's talk about the keynotes, because I actually did not go to any of the keynotes, and I'm wondering if anyone did and if they could share what was shared at the keynotes. Anyone want to go? And I'd appreciate if you put up your hands so that we can, have some order here as we let people up. Anyone? Keynotes?
I'm a Luddite and don't know how to put my hand up. I'm sorry, just talking. But I went to day one keynotes. Priyanka did a live demo, which failed, which I thought was fantastic because it just goes to show not everyone's perfect and we're all human. So I enjoyed it. It only failed because of the internet, not because of anything Priyanka did, of course. But I appreciated the risk. And then also I was struck with the keynotes. A couple of things. One is the sponsored ones had much better speakers than they normally do. So I didn't hate sitting through them. Like no one's super excited to hear a commercial, but at least it was like dynamic. And then the other thing was they had a lot more panel discussions. It was kind of more off the cuff and more human feeling than I think other ones that I've been through. So and then I always love the project update videos. Those make me feel connected to the community. So I had a great day one of keynotes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I missed them, and I don't think the recordings are available yet, but I hope to catch them. And you're right, like, a failure, even at a keynote. I mean, that could be the most awkward thing ever, but at the same time, the recovery is also important too. And I'm glad that, it all worked out, and, it was the internet to blame. But I'll be honest, like at my Edge Day talk, I was working with a co-speaker, and our demo literally failed like the 5 minutes before the talk ended. And I was like, all right, let me just provide some top cover and talk through, how this would have all worked out. And so while I was doing that, my co-speaker, she literally like was at the keyboard, figuring shit out. And I looked over and I saw that she got it working. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And it worked, like right at the end. And that was amazing. However, my second talk at CiliumCon, everything was going well right up until that very last ping, which failed. And I was like, oh, cringe, especially in front of a room of network engineers that expect to see those replies, those ICMP replies. That hurt. Anyways, I still haven't had.
But that first one where it almost didn't work and it did work at the end is so exciting for the audience. Way more exciting than if it works from the start.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, it's hard on your ego and whatnot, but at the end of the day, I haven't had the time to really research and discover why it failed. And at this point, it's a little hard for me to do so because I'm like still trying to decompress from the whole KubeCon thing. Like I'm on PTO. I don't want to be doing any work things, even though I'm here. I want to chat about KubeCon. I want folks to, catch some of that vibe and see what actually went on last week. But in any case, let's move on to Adriana, because I think you've got some thoughts around the keynotes as well.
Yeah, so totally agree. Like, having that live demo, super gutsy, but mad props to the fact that he had a backup, which is amazing. I'm definitely not courageous enough to do a live demo. I did a demo in my talk and we had a recording. The other thing that I thought was quite interesting about the keynote, there was a panel on sustainability, and oh my God, the stats that they showed on like the environmental footprint of technology is absolutely staggering. And I hope the recording of that comes gets posted soon, because it's super eye-opening, and I think it really underscores the fact that we can't just assume that we're, like, because we're in tech, like, it doesn't use up resources. Yes, it uses up a lot of resources. Us being at the conference uses up a lot of resources. Using, cloud computing uses up a lot of resources. But there are things that we can do to make us more mindful of these things, which was super cool. So I think that was like a huge highlight for me. The sponsored talks, not a huge fan of them, and I will leave it at that.
Yeah, I think there always needs to be a balance in terms of sponsored keynotes and actual authentic keynotes. And we could get into this and we could have a good deep discussion about this, but maybe we'll save that towards the end. Kunal, why don't you share some of your thoughts around the keynotes?
Yeah, I raised my hand because I was writing a blog on like KubeCon summary. So yeah, the new Kubernetes versions were announced. If you're interested in that, I think Crossplane was announced as an incubating CNCF project. Also around AI and LLMs. So the LLM starter pack, CNCF launched, shared about. The keynotes, they were also talking about platform engineering, so the shift from DevOps to platform engineering. Someone mentioned about a lot of developers being at the conference. The keynotes also addressed the importance of like dev experience and application development and like integrations and stuff. There's also something about the observability tag. Can't remember now. And I think overall, like the keynotes also highlighted the community spirit of KubeCon, which is nice. Um, but yeah, so yeah, that's what I could summarize.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I want to revisit the sustainability part that Adriana mentioned, but let's save that towards the end. Michael, why don't you share some of your thoughts about the keynotes?
Yeah, I wanted to share an inspiring keynote from Tim Hawkins about the Kubernetes maturity and stability. So, like, we're having Kubernetes LTS now. We kind of need to say no more often, in order to maintain that. And also putting it in contrast with AI workloads, LLMs, Gen AI, and whatnot. Which brings me back to Pranka's keynote, that Kubernetes might have its Linux moment. So Kubernetes is the de facto standard for container orchestration, microservices, and so on. And I think it's really inspiring to being able, like, Pranka's demo was about running only open source components on a local machine using Ollama, OLLAMA.ai. Which I totally want to try out. So there's a demo repository available, and I wrote about a little bit in my newsletter, opsindev.news, where you can read more about this. And it's also super inspiring, like, to see that open source enables all these amazing things, even though there are like commercial providers and entities for AI. And I think generally it's great to see like the adoption of AI, but slowly, and not with like we need to do everything on AI. And yeah, I think this kind of summarizes the keynotes. I really appreciate the community focus in the keynotes. It's not just like we're building products and things like that, but the contributor awards were amazing. And also like giving shout outs to everyone, and also the product updates. This keeps me more informed than like any blog post I'm reading where I don't have too much time for it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of great stuff that went on in the keynotes as well, and the AI stuff seemed to be pretty interesting overall because it looks like pretty much every company is pivoting in that direction. All right, let me pass it to Nick.
Thank you, sir. I was gonna mention Tim's keynote because it's the only one I actually got to see. Going back to the point where I'd actually like to be an attendee, but I liked the idea of like just doing a retrospective. Like he looked at all of the efforts that got us to where we are, and then what effort and like what we can do to make things better in the future. And it was pretty insightful. My favorite part is that like the call out to 1 trillion hours of contributions already made, and what will the next trillion look like. Um, and then on top of that, his idea of just trying to move us all past the cluster, and start thinking just about the workload abstraction and how we can do things to reduce the complexity of managing multiple clusters, which in my job I see this day in and day out. So just appreciated his thought leadership there. It was great to hear to hear his thoughts and see how they were shared with everybody. Definitely, but not to be biased. Obviously, I work for Google, but it's the only keynote I saw. But it was a good one.
Yeah, it's important to like understand that we are probably well beyond that phase of building Kubernetes, right? Like Kubernetes has gotten boring at this point, and that's a good thing. And it's what's next. It's really about how we build on top of it and really accelerate the interoperability of all these different technologies, right? Platform engineering or whatever we want to call it these days. Um, but I also think that there needs to be a movement to reterm, like I think reterm some of these some of these keywords we use in the CNCF or even in Kubernetes. And like I'll give you a very good example, and this came up a few times, and I'm sure that us trying to push a PR through would probably break a million and one things. For example, in Kubernetes you can expose a service with the load balancer type. And that thing about using that keyword load balancer seems a bit interesting because yes, when you're on a cloud provider, a load balancer gets provisioned, but the ultimate idea is we're trying to expose something, and so that term load balancer can be kind of misleading in some ways. I don't know. It's just a thought, and I'm hoping that we start to see more and more of these I guess terms changed in some way, shape, or form to become more aligned to what we're trying to accomplish. Anyways, Keith, I think you were up next.
Yeah, thanks, Marino. I have to kind of piggyback off of Nick and talk about, someone else before as well, but talk about Tim's keynote because that resonated so strongly with me. And not only my Kubernetes journey, but also my Linux journey. I started, programming when I was, 8, 10 years old and constantly kind of found myself, uh, for lack of a better term, like priced out of Linux. I didn't have I found myself banging my head against the wall trying to understand the guides that were out there. I didn't have the background to be able to pick up some of the finer points. And now I use Linux pretty routinely in my daily development cycle. It's my OS of choice in my dev box. And when I think about the components of Linux that I actually have to touch, it's very few. There's not a lot that I have to know about. Now I know the skbuff data structure for how it moves packets through, just as a really niche example, in order to use Linux. And I think Kubernetes, and this is what Tim was illuminating during his talk, his keynote. Kubernetes is on that same path. The users of Kubernetes today are already probably an order of magnitude um, more sophisticated or utilize more advanced use cases or are more knowledgeable about the internals of Kubernetes than the next decade's Kubernetes users. And I think that's what we see with Linux. The early Linux users were hackers and folks who enjoyed being able to build their kernel from scratch. And nowadays, right, you don't expect most Linux users out there don't necessarily want to have to deal with that. And so I think, when it comes to writing software, I work in SEO service mesh. When we're writing software in the ecosystem to build on top of Kubernetes, that was a really impactful point for me to think about what's the next generation of Kubernetes user going to want to accomplish, and what's going to be important to them. And Tim's point was they're going to care about the basics of reliability and the cost of adding one small niche feature in Kubernetes starts becoming exponential to that next generation of users, because now they have to know about it. And so the more that we can do today to reduce the mental thought burden of the next generation of Kubernetes users, I think really sets us up to be able to deliver a lasting product and a lasting orchestration tool, which I think we all believe Kubernetes is.
I think that's extremely important to go back and watch, right? Like to really understand how Linux has transformed, but is still there, still present, is still foundational to everything we do, but is also solidifying everything we do. That's really cool. So, once those keynotes get launched, I think everyone should go take a look at those recordings. We do have so before I proceed to Maurizio and Tim, we do have a new speaker that joined us. Neela, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience as a KubeCon.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for letting me in the speaker space. Yeah, my name is Nela. I'm a developer advocate at Fiberplane, and this was my second KubeCon. And I think, Nick, you said that before, and I can agree. I wish I could join this as an attendee, because if you are there with your company, you have so many other things to do. That's why I really enjoyed the co-located events, because I could join them as a normal attendee. And also, I felt really home at the AppCon that was happening the first time this year. So I come from a more back-end engineering background, and I really felt a lot of those topics presented there resonate with me. And yeah, I don't know how everyone else feels, but I'm really inspired after KubeCon, and I come back with a huge list of tools I want to get my hands on. And now I also have my normal work next to it. So let's see how many I can really transform into code after KubeCon.
That's a fantastic, experience. I agree with that sentiment that going to KubeCon as attendee is probably the best thing you can do, because you immerse yourself in so much kinds of learning in various dimensions. Having an obligation to do stuff for your company is quite challenging. Like, look, you show up to KubeCon and you've got booth duty for maybe 3-4 hours of the day every day, which actually is very, it's fun, but it's also very draining, and it doesn't leave you with enough energy to go out and hit those talks. Maybe if you have an afternoon shift, you might be able to get those talks in the morning, but if you have an all-day shift, I mean, that's tough. And so you can only catch some of that through some of what people say when they come up to your booth. It's hard, especially if you're a small company too. You don't get those opportunities to just really go to events and conferences just for the talks. I mean, there's a focus for the company to try and drive revenue and gain some more logos. And for KubeCon, that's what it's been about, right? And it kind of I have to say it. I have to say that because, look, I know it's great that we all come out there and do some talks, but ultimately, the main goal of KubeCon is to continue to drive more business and drive more strategy and have more of these organizations purchase things. So, all right, let me transfer over to Maurizio. Why don't you go ahead?
I just want to mention a couple of things. Going back to the keynotes, right? Definitely, I always love to go there and try to read between the lines about things that they mention and what are the things that are coming. I found it fascinating in Priyanka's demo that she kept mentioning dynamic resource allocation. That it's something that it's coming new in Kubernetes. It's kind of now becoming more stable. And I always wonder why was that kind of like mentioned so hard, and I don't know if like the group knows about it. That was the first thing, and the second thing is that I guess for the more experienced people who have been attending to KubeCon for a long time, I strongly recommend you folks to invite someone new, because I've invited a friend this time for the first time who was like external, never been into a KubeCon, and the experience that they had was mind blowing. I can actually see them like when when your mind clicks and they actually start realizing the potential of that community and how that community will make them grow. It was fascinating for me to see, and it was the first time that I actually remember kind of like my first KubeCon experiences. So, if you're feeling kind of like an old person going to your seventh KubeCon, invite someone new, you will have an amazing experience again.
Tim, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So I kind of want to echo a couple of sentiments about how we about kind of how what's kind of next for what we're doing, and you made a good point in saying that Kubernetes has become a little boring, right? It's become a little it's to be for all intents and purposes, it's become a little bit like VMware. It's now just like an accepted. Well, I mean, it's still going to be around in a couple of years, but I mean, it's still essentially going to be what has replaced what most people do with VMs, right? And so I feel like with that, kind of stability and acceptance of what it is and where it is in the industry, we still have what I feel is an overemphasis on like developer experience, et cetera, because there's no shortage of developer tools to do literally everything. But Kubernetes at this point, I really feel, is an operations platform, right? When you look at platform engineering, when you look at all the tooling now to integrate Kubernetes with infrastructure and infrastructure automation and tooling and observability, yes, we can pull data out from the stack, et cetera, but what it really is now is how operations is interacting with the underlying infrastructure wherever it lies, and providing APIs or tooling for developers to deploy code. But I think what we're at now with Kubernetes, the whole notion of shift left, um, I think we can all recognize primarily was a mistake. And as things shift back, I guess, to the right or whatever, a lot of these concerns, like I said, become operational concerns. So Kubernetes going forward, I feel like these conferences need to be a lot more operations focused. And I'd like to see a lot more operations focused, not only within the conference itself, but also within like the vendor space.
I can jump in. Yeah. So I might not have been in Chicago physically this time, but like my spirit was definitely riding the cloud waves. But I really loved hearing everyone's experiences about KubeCon and all your takeaways, perspectives, and also worries. But personally, I feel KubeCon is like a treasure trove of innovation. So I would love to know that what interesting themes or trends did you all notice during the conference? Anything that stood out as the next big thing? So anyone who would like to start off with? Yeah, Michael, sure.
I think eBPF is already here, but the hype has gone a little more beyond, I would say. So I've seen a lot of folks jumping on Cilium. I've also attended the Cilium Con on the co-located events day on Monday, where they shared like Cilium Tetragon for security observability and policy enforcement, which sounds super interesting. I do know that there are Cilium labs where you can actually like learn about it, and I think this will be like one of the next big things, together with like AI and everything else. I think eBPF is hard to learn, but we're getting better on improving the developer experience. So I think this will be one theme either late this year or next year, taking on everything.
Thanks for sharing, Michael. Again, Marino has hands.
Yeah, so regarding that eBPF piece, right? I think last year we saw a massive movement towards, understanding what eBPF was and, how it's really helping things. But I think there was also a little bit of confusion, right? eBPF is not a Kubernetes technology for one. you can use it in Kubernetes through accessing parts of the kernel and then being able to translate some of that stuff into user space. But it's not Kubernetes at all. It's a Linux thing. Now, the other consideration is like we spend a lot of time trying to help people develop eBPF programs. Why? I mean, we're not really thinking about this correctly. In terms of eBPF, we want to be able to leverage all the great features, and we have great companies already doing this. Pixie, Sysdig, Isovalent, through Cilium. These companies are doing some magical things with eBPF, and they're continuing to enhance that experience. But I don't think we want to empower developers to build on top of eBPF. I think what we want to do is take some of that technology and really just be able to solve observability challenges or security challenges at that kernel level. And so I agree with you, Michael. I think we're going to see so much more acceleration in the consumption of eBPF-based technologies, and we'll build upon it, right? We'll continue to build upon it, and we'll see some optimizations, but then we'll plateau. We're going to plateau because the reality is I don't truly believe eBPF provides as much of a set of optimizations as it's been glorified to be able to do, right? And that's just a personal opinion. It's not reflective of anyone that I work for or anything. It's just I really think that we're over engineering eBPF to do things that we could already do today, and we shouldn't try and reinvent the wheel.
We have Ramiro as well. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Ramiro. I'm the founder of Octero. We're a company that builds a platform for the dev environments on Kubernetes. I've been attending KubeCon pretty much since the first one. It's been really cool to see how the community is growing. I was lucky enough to be involved in the early days. I want to kind of extend what Marina was saying, that to me, one of the nicest surprises was, at least on maybe on the hallway conversations, was this shift on the eBPF conversation from this, silver bullet that was going to solve every single problem, observability, troubleshooting, networking, XYZ, into, we're excited about this, and now into a more pragmatic solution that is great for certain things, but not for everything. I had a lot of conversations with people about how they were like, hey, they bet on eBPF, then they realized there was all these problems, everybody was overusing it, and now they're like kind of getting back to a more realistic stand. I think the vendors, without naming names, I think have done a good job at helping us understand where eBPF is fantastic, because I think it's a fantastic technology, whether it's a Linux thing or a Kubernetes thing, but also where it doesn't work, and I like that a lot. I think it's natural, right? Like we, as an industry, we always go through these hype cycles where something looks amazing, too good to be true, and as we learn more, we realize, okay, yeah, there are certain things that is great for, not for everything. So that was really nice. I like that a lot. And the other thing I really enjoyed about this KubeCon was the seeing more and more conversations about app development, less about just the infra and more about the concerns like, hey, all we do in Kubernetes is for developers, is for teams. So, the fact that we had like the application developer con, which was great. I think the work that Mauricio has been doing in that area is really paying off, and a few others. And that was really cool. I'm a dev advocate. I love speaking about developer tools, productivity. So it's cool to be able to kind of have a venue and a space to talk more about that, and less just about, YAML and infra.
Thanks, Ramiro, for sharing your point of view. And yeah, we have Boo. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hey, yeah, just to add on to that eBPF thing, like when I, as the comments are being made here, I just think of VXLAN and SDN and software defined, like how many words, terms had software defined added to them after Nicira had VXLAN, and this was going to save the world. And now, okay, we have SDN, and this is probably just going to be baked in, and you're not going to be actually understanding VXLAN at some point. And maybe that's going to come up with Kubernetes networking again, software defined again, but it's not really like that big hype thing anymore. Like it's going to solve all these problems, and VMware spent $1.2 billion for a protocol. And then second thing was just the on the platform ops side of things and catering to developers. I'm just kind of maybe if I can pose the question of, are people noticing like developer workspaces, dev containers? I know, the dev pod stuff, VS Code embedded into GitHub. Like I see all these startups now that have some maybe basic, if you will, developer workspaces, and they're looking to fit in somewhere where some of the bigger environments or the bigger vendors have something built in. But is that truly part of platform ops at this point? Is that part of what you should be building towards?
Yeah, can you everyone hear me? That's Adam the Delva here, first space ever. All right, cool. Thanks for the reactions. Sorry if I was off of mute. I was returning something at Coach, but I'm back here. I actually just resigned from Microsoft. And I was actually talking to the coach person here, but one of the things that Microsoft has been really building and evangelizing internally and externally is automating a lot of that drudgery for developers. And right on the head, whoever said that topic of we're transitioning away from platform engineering to more, well, I shouldn't say that. We're not focused as much on the YAML and backend configuration of Kubernetes, more focused on developer outcomes and developer acceleration. And GitHub being the kind of de facto open source community for the developers that Microsoft ultimately acquired, it becomes a very now like, all right, we're on GitHub, we're all using Kubernetes. How do we now get to day 3, day 4, right? We're looking at day 2 operations is now a standard. Day 3, day 4 is like developers are now looking at integrating their current framework into Kubernetes and how do we scale that? And yeah, I hear it, especially around the GitHub like widget tooling. So I actually bumped into 2 founders from Israel that are building a widget that does something in the GitHub ecosystem very specific to, again, just developer productivity. They don't know about Kubernetes. These folks, they don't want to know about Kubernetes. So they're reaching that level of abstraction on the platform level and the cloud service level so that folks can just focus more on developer productivity. It's just what internally Microsoft is evangelizing. We genuinely, it's an interesting framework. Internally at Microsoft, we didn't talk about the back end of AKS, for example. We wanted to focus on the outcome, and that's where everyone is now heading and as a macro theme. Just agreeing with everything that everybody's saying. Thank you.
Yeah, Ramiro.
My company does pretty much that. We're focused on the environment for Kubernetes and just as a trend, yes, we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing a lot of this platform engineering teams at companies, especially enterprises or like very large startups, doing that, like kind of bundling the responsibility of the developer experience into the platform experience. That's something I really like. It's something I've discussed, over the years, which is, hey, you can decouple platform from or whatever it was before, right? CI, DevOps, from the experience for developers. So we're seeing that as a big trend. I think one of the most interesting things for me is how this platform engineering teams are thinking of platform as a product. And that's a talk that I would love to develop if anybody's interested. Is this kind of adopting the product mentality when building an internal platform and how developer experience needs to be there, and whether this is remote dev environments or simplifying access to documentation, service discovery, kind of like what Backstage is doing. It's definitely a big trend, and I think expanding on what Adam said, this day 3 concerns is one thing I saw a lot in this KubeCon is becoming more and more a topic of conversation. Like our booth was full most of the time with people who wanted to talk about this. Hey, how do I build dev environments into my platform? So it was something really cool to see, and I think it's a natural evolution as Kubernetes gets more boring, and we go from the hype into the practical day-to-day use of Kubernetes as a platform for hopefully everything.
Is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a sort of a different take on all this. So first of all, I feel that as an industry, we over pivot on new, right? So like all these, like the reason why platforms as a service in general have not worked out for the long haul is that they can only serve a very small segment of the market. Most of our customers, if you're, I mean, if your customers are, if you're building a product or whatever, but or even users of our platforms, you know, they have a, a large amount of applications that are, they're even struggling to containerize, frankly, right? So there's there's probably something like 60-70% of the market share that's not even yet capable of using all of these new fancy things that we're building. And so I think platform engineering is an acknowledgement that there is no one path to rule them all, but there is an agreement like within an organization that maybe we can get more of them if we're building for specific experiences. So we have these 4 types of applications in our organization. We will build a platform, right, to serve those needs. And that platform may be on Kubernetes, it may be just on VMs, but the point is that they're building something that serves their needs as opposed to trying to fit into some new paradigm that's like the fancy new thing. And I just I wish that we spent more time focusing on the existing applications than trying to build yet another PaaS as an industry. It's I know it's probably frustrating for the community. It's certainly frustrating um, when you see companies that I don't know try to go like back in the day. They tried to go into Pivotal Cloud Foundry with all these promises. They'd get I don't know 1 or 2 applications in, have success, spend a lot of money, and then the rest of the companies looking at this platform being like, how are we supposed to take our 25-year-old legacy app and cram it into Pivotal? Oh, you have to rewrite the whole thing. Okay, well, that's kind of a deal breaker. Anyway, a little passionate about this space. But yeah, just wanted to get that thought out there.
You know, it's funny, Nick. I mean, there are 2 examples that come to mind of basically what you just suggested. So there's this project called KubeVirt, which allows us to run VMs inside of Kubernetes. There's this capability of onboarding VMs into a service mesh through Istio. When you think about this, when you think about what you just said, we already have these solutions that existed. Why did we have to go reinvent some of this stuff in the world of cloud native? Is exactly like I agree with you, man. I 100% agree with you there. Because I think we have gone down this route of over-engineering this new shiny stuff. We actually all have shiny object syndrome. I don't know if what's his name is here, but I hope he catches that. And that's why we're here. Right? Literally over-engineering all of these new technologies to do the things that we were already doing in vSphere or in OpenStack or even in the cloud. So I'm with you, man. But here's the other thing I'm also noticing as a pattern. This is just a point of view as well. So platform engineering as a recurring theme inside of KubeCon has been not clearly defined because it's been so broad. It's very broad, right? And it's also been very relatable to this concept of IDP. So I personally think that at some point platform engineering is going to be broken down into a few areas. I'm going to just focus in on one, and I think it's going to be network platform engineering, where we're going to use the concepts of what IAC offers us, so maybe doing some of that magic that Pulumi offers us, to basically go from nothing to a service mesh. But a developer shouldn't see that. The only people that should see that is a network team or a network platform team or a platform operations team. And the reason they should be able to see that is as an app gets deployed, you know, it's going to need all of this underpinning plumbing networking to get this all working. And someone needs to be responsible for that. Some team needs to be responsible for that. At the same time, there's going to be some observability platform engineering going on where there needs to be some sort of mechanism to decide, you know, how best to navigate failures, how best to scale some of our solutions, how best to, you know, discern what might be going on between our applications and why they might not be able to call each other, right? And then there's going to be security platform engineering, right? How to bake in all the nice certificates so that we can understand identity a little bit better. And I don't think that has been clearly defined out of KubeCon. Tim, go ahead.
So I think a lot of the things you're talking about require some level of standardization, and some of those things are being addressed at KubeCon, like the notion of having, like take observability, right? Like one of the, I think that's probably one of the main appeals to OTel is to have a standardized kind of way of of producing data so that platform engineers don't have to try and redesign that wheel or necessarily have to depend on an outside vendor, right, to do this task. And so as we start to as we start to take off with more projects like that, especially when it comes around things like security or if it comes to things like sustainability, right? How to have a kind of standardized method or protocol in dealing with these concerns within an CNCF backed or other open source project, I think is going to be critical for the community. So I feel like sidecar or maybe accessory concerns need to take more of a forefront. And yes, I do know there is some of that to some extent in the colos, but I feel like it should be more of a forefront in the KubeCon uh, conference main, and also should be more the forefront of the discussions we're having. Like I said, we've become very focused on the developer experience, and I know I said this earlier, but we've become very focused on the developer experience, and a lot of the things that we're addressing now are not developer related. They are operations, security, finance, and these other things related. And so we really need to start addressing these larger concerns as Kubernetes adoption goes larger and as larger organizations with a lot of these frameworks existing for their with all of these a lot of these frameworks in place for their existing infrastructure and platforms, right, are going to need to have some way of duplicating this or have some sort of analog for it for Kubernetes. And I think we're going to start seeing them drive that. The main problem with these large organizations driving that is they're going to have kind of more of a legacy sort of approach to it. And so I think for those of us who have been in the cloud native space for a while and dealing with these types of things for a while, we need to make sure that we have a voice in that.
I saw Nick was unmuted. I thought Nick wanted to speak.
Yeah, that was an accident. I was thinking, man, that's a lot of dead air after Tim's talk. But then I'm like, it's Tim talking, so I expect a ton of dead air after he talks.
That's true. That's true. That tends to happen.
Mic drop situation. Um, I want to pivot to some more of that observability stuff, and I'm actually going to pick on Adriana and Neela about it because throughout the conference, I saw a lot of different topics around observability from platform operations standpoint and a developer standpoint. So maybe you both might want to weigh in on some of the things you saw and some of the things we should look out for.
One of the things that I really want to focus on in the coming year, and I think it's something that we need to elevate a bit more, is observability of CI/CD pipelines. And I actually did a talk on that for the Observability Day co-located event. And I think it's important because, like, you know, when our CI/CD platforms don't work, we can't get our code to prod. So, and it's interesting because, like, when my co-speaker and I were doing research for the talk, we're like, oh my God, everyone talks about how important it is to have observability of CI/CD pipelines, but like when you go to find out how to do it, there are like no answers because it's not like there is no standard around it. So I would like to see more of that. I see that as being becoming more and more important in the coming year. Um, just so that, like, when shit breaks, we got to figure out why it's not, getting deployed, getting built.
Yeah, I think actually that's a very interesting point, and something that I realized is with open telemetry being now or having now the standard for metrics out there as well, there's often still the gap when it comes to the instrumentation of applications. So when it comes then like to the backend engineer, should they do it manually or is a team providing a type of auto instrumentation. And I think this needs to be communicated more to backend engineers, the value that they get out of telemetry data, so how they can use it to enhance the application performance and debugging their applications when they start instrumenting the code. And I think this is something where we need to collaborate or find the better collaboration between infra teams and application developer teams, so also they understand the value in instrumenting applications.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that because I think one of my biggest pet peeves is like, and this happened to me personally. I was running an observability practices team, and the developers were like, "Hey, why doesn't your team instrument our code?" And we're like, "It's not our code. How the hell are we supposed to know what to instrument? Like, you have to take some ownership of your damn code." Um, the other thing that I wanted to mention around that is, there's so much auto instrumentation available to us, which is awesome. It's a great like way to lower the barrier to entry for getting into open telemetry. But we actually had a speaker come on for OTel in Practice, which is a series that we run for the OTel and user working group every month. And they actually talked about how they were at a company where there was too much instrumentation. They were instrumenting all the things, and it was absolute garble, absolute crap, because like they couldn't make sense of what was going on. So you have to achieve that fine balance, right, of what's necessary to instrument. Don't instrument for the sake of instrumentation, otherwise you end up with a garble of data and you can't make sense of it.
Yeah, completely agree. And especially some of the vendors you would put and store the data also charge due to the amount of data. And then you really want to be in charge how much you collect and that you only collect the necessary information.
Yeah, totally. So you don't get dinged with those horribly high bills, right?
Yes.
So, having just mentioned some of the things to look out for, within the observability space, would you both share maybe some projects that, folks might be interested to look at, maybe areas that they can go get started to better understand how to instrument some of this observability?
I would say, a good starting point is always the Open Telemetry docs at opentelemetry.io. And specifically, like if you want to see a working example of a complex application that's like multi-microservice, multi-language, instrumented in using OpenTelemetry in the OpenTelemetry GitHub repo, which is the handle is open-telemetry. There's a repo called OpenTelemetry Demo, and it's based on the Google Hipster shop, and it's been like it's a monster of its own. It's now an astronomy shop, and it's gotten like so complicated and has like such cool stuff, and I think is a really great way of seeing like what OpenTelemetry can actually do. And it's got examples in all sorts of different languages that are supported by OpenTelemetry. So I definitely think that's a really great place to get started.
Yeah, and I think also, if I remember correctly, it was some time that I looked into it. It's not only the languages, but also you get a sense of open source tooling available to store telemetry data. So besides using the OTel tools, you also get like good sentiment of like maybe a Jaeger or Zipkin or Grafana dashboards. So you can see how much you can do already with open source tooling.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, right? Because oftentimes it's like, okay, where do I send it to? So yeah, they've been considerate enough to like demonstrate, yeah, we're actually sending this somewhere, and you can see it.
Awesome. Yeah, I missed a ton on that, so thanks for that information. I'll go check it out. Did anyone catch any of the security track at KubeCon?
It was my understanding that there were no security talks at
Oh,
KubeCon.
Oh, is it because of Cloud Native Security Con? That separate thing that they've got going on?
No, some dude was on there trying to promote that thing by saying there were no security talks at KubeCon, which is fallacy. So it was just me trolling.
Yeah, I missed all that stuff. What were some of the other themes that some of y'all caught at KubeCon?
Certainly, I know, as we mentioned before, the emphasis, and some may say, overemphasis of AI as this thing that must be integrated into Kubernetes somehow. There was a lot more focus that I saw on kind of process and incident management, which was good to see because we're not all just like, yeah, we use Kubernetes, but like, what do we do when stuff breaks, and how do we build that up? And then a few places I saw we're focusing more on education, and I think that is going to be a key thing that we probably need to have another big focus on as a community, is how to teach more people how to do this. Um, this is not the same Kubernetes I started using. I don't think it is for anyone who's been using it for a while. It has progressed a lot. And it is a gigantic taco to swallow. So yeah, I was happy to see some focus on that. I would like to see even more focus on that, on bringing other people up to speed on this big monster.
Yeah, I'll echo what Tim is sharing in terms of education. And so this is also a massive opportunity for folks outside of technology to be aware of what's going on the platform engineering and cloud community. There's a lot of silos, right? So the macro theme is silos are death. Internally within the CNCF, there are silos. Everybody has this idea, and then my takeaway is this: everybody has an idea of how to do the thing, but there is no consensus across multiple communities around monitoring, observability, security, on how to achieve an optimal outcome based on our requirements and how to do the thing. And there's a lot of that is because a lot of folks are using simple buzzwords to categorize broad strokes. And so being very specific in terms of how to educate a platform engineer on the topic of securing containers at scale in AWS, that's a very specific path. So copying and pasting a framework where these golden paths are possible, I think is a ideal state. The second thing I'll share in terms of AI being the buzzword du jour, yes, and my former employer, Microsoft, is partially responsible for that, with deeply integrating OpenAI and a part of their entire portfolio from 365 all the way up through Azure. But now it's becoming a consistent, ambiguous theme, similar to Kubernetes maybe like 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We're now aware of how to Kubernetes, right? We have these, call it golden paths or relative easy buttons on how to productionize a workload through managed service offerings. But now, how do we now standardize and govern the AI, right? So AI governance is going to be, I think, another macro theme that we should consider very closely, and how it integrates back to Kubernetes. And the last thing is this damn thing called WASM, which Marino thankfully shared with me before I went to KubeCon, so I got to do some research. But there was a lot of buzz in WASM, and using this as like the next gen thing, and the shiny object syndrome continues to go down this path, because we're all looking at the next thing. We should focus on cleaning our tech debt first and preparing for the next thing with a platform that's scalable. So those are my three takeaways: education, the new generation of distributed compute, and standard golden paths for the outcome we're looking to achieve.
Adam, I need your audio set up, man. It is off the hook. Anyways, no, thanks for sharing that. That's some great perspectives, because when you think about the different themes that show up at KubeCon, all of this translates to some of these business goals that a lot of these organizations are trying to achieve. Well, I'd like to welcome up Christine, who was also at KubeCon and I believe delivered a keynote at CiliumCon. Welcome, Christine.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. My voice is kind of wrecked from KubeCon and popping around a little bit, but yeah, I did want to echo that WASM was definitely something that I did see. Especially on the co-located day, there was a WASM co-located day, and a lot of ML tied in with WASM near the end as well. So I would recommend checking those out on YouTube. But again, I was kind of popping in a little bit, but I heard the discussion around developer, like enabling the developers, and I was wondering if anyone had any opinions on Backstage, because I think that is just such an open-ended project with like plugins being able to be developed by other people, that I think it's touching a lot of things. So I just wanted to hear if anyone else had thoughts on that.
I'll just comment on Backstage real quick. While I was at Microsoft, like 3 or 4 of my customers were using Backstage in some capacity. And being the fact that it is very open and there is, again, the same issue of integrating services and existing services to something that is also open, there's a lot of variance for customization. So that's a risk in my opinion, but yeah, IDPs in general are going to blow up a lot. And I saw the Backstage talk from Spotify at Google at the office a couple months ago. It's going to only become more and more popular and prevalent. And there, I think, is going to be a new category of IDP best of breed tooling. If you haven't heard about it, there's another product called Ops Level. Check it out. But those folks are trying to wrap an enterprise offering around it, more like Spotify and the open source community. So yeah, we're seeing a lot from customer adoption, developer adoption, but then there's that toil of configuring Backstage. So engineering an IDP, is that really what we should be focused on from the business side? Let's find out. But yeah, it's popular.
Jump in, Nick.
Hey, sorry. This topic I'm very passionate about it. And whenever we talk about IDPs, um, I just want to clarify something because I've talked to a lot of customers. When you build a product that is an abstraction on top of another set of technology, and you're building that product to serve a user, you interview that user and you build the product to meet their demands and their requirements, right? Not every single user that's building applications on top of your platform needs a UI. So it's perfectly okay if the users of the platform that you're building are comfortable with CLIs, with YAML, with other things. They don't have to have a UI. UI is not a requirement of an IDP. It's something that maybe some users might want, and that maybe when you find out that they do want them, you should incorporate into your platform. But you don't need to have a UI to have an IDP. I just want to just put that out there. You could put it on wax, press it, and ship it to everybody.
Nick actually integrates that into all the Anthos documentation that he approves.
I just want to point out that it's an hour and 45 minutes, I think, in, and you made that joke, so it's a little late, but
I mean, it's the first time you said anything worth commenting on.
yes. But no, seriously, like it doesn't need a UI. If you do need a UI, there's a lot of great solutions or products being built out there. I'm not saying that they're not good products. I'm just saying that don't throw a UI into your workflow if it's not something that your end users want.
Well, then how do you address accessibility? What if your end users are comprised of folks that need a UI as well as a CLI as well as an API?
That's a requirement that you build for, but you don't build it until you have the requirement, right?
But then if you don't build it or have that on your roadmap, it almost feels like you're being not very inclusive to your audience.
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm picking up what you're putting down, Reno. I think that if you have folks that need a specific type of experience, you can build that for them. I'm sure that there's ways for folks who have very specific needs that you want to be inclusive of, and to provide them that capability via a CLI. Like you could do talk to text. There's all kinds of things. So yeah.
So I think any thoughtful implementation of a platform would include the ability to integrate existing tools of any kind into it. Like it's whether you have a UI or CLI, the backend connection to that platform should all just still be an API, right? So the CLI itself does not talk directly to whatever the platform is. It just talks to the APIs of that platform. So if you have accessibility tooling on UIs that you need to be able to use, especially the ones that are already existing, you can just make sure that there's an integration for the back end of your platform. And I feel like that's going to be something that's going to be very common, because as you know, for whatever developer platform is built, you're not going to expect the business unit entire to switch over to using just a CLI, especially if you have to bubble up metrics and observability for business reporting, for intelligence reporting, things that have to go to finance, things that have to go to personnel, et cetera, right? You're going to assume that not everybody who is consuming an IDP in any way, shape, or form is in fact going to be a developer.
This is true. All right. What were some of the other themes that came up at KubeCon? Boo, I know you've been roaming around the expo floor. Maybe you saw a bunch of interesting things that you might want to tell us about.
Yeah, actually, the two main ones I think I brought up before were the eBPF and the observability is being talked about. I guess one thing as well, at least roaming around our booth, was Gateway API. Not sure if other folks have had any thoughts on that going 1.0 and the launch of that? I know just selfishly from our perspective, we were really excited about our Gateway Fabric being launched and people coming by and asking about that. So just wondering if folks had thoughts on that one.
Yeah, the whole notion of going towards standardization is actually pretty cool. It's really showing the fact that Kubernetes is maturing. I mean, with Gateway API going GA, and then you've got things like sidecars being prioritized inside of Kubernetes, you're starting to see that now it's becoming a platform that provides a just enough approach. And there might be things that you might need in addition to that, but you can get started pretty easily, right? It's almost like batteries included at that point. But with respect to Gateway API, I think this is a good move overall because standardization really helps in a lot of different ways, especially as you're starting to, expose services in your cluster. And this is more of a networking thing, right? Like, let's be real. A lot of people aren't going to be sitting there building YAMLs to expose their services through a Gateway API. But the reality is, like, it actually simplifies a lot of what you would do in app deployments. Because now you don't have to really depend on, a particular service mesh. You can have different classes of meshes or different classes of artifacts that offer up your gateway API functionality. So it's exciting to see that movement. It's exciting to see that it's GA'd, and we're going to see some enhancements on top of Gateway API as well to really enhance like things like TLS and the experience of versioning and whatnot, to the point that what's the point of a service mesh? And that can be scary at times, right? Like considering I work for a company that sells mesh, it really comes into question. Like some of these technologies almost become downplayed, right? And then how do you provide additional value on top of that? There are other ways. We can get into a conversation about this and why a service mesh is super important. But the reality is it's simplifying the experience, the onboarding experience into using Kubernetes altogether. What other themes came up? I'm going to pick on Christine.
I was just gonna talk about Gateway API as well because it's like a project that's been near and dear to my heart for a while. I think something that's cool in the Gateway API specifically is reference grants, allowing trust to be established between objects. And now I think it's being pushed to be in the main Kubernetes install, so that's pretty exciting. And I think something around the Gateway API that's always been kind of inspiring is like empowering the developers as well to manage their routes, like HTTP route that's supposed to be underneath like the application developer. And I think that ties back to that theme of empowering developers to interact with Kubernetes systems in a way that's like safe, but also they feel like they can roll out a new version or something. So that tied in with CI/CD, it's like all coming full circle. It's kind of crazy.
Actually, Christine, I'm going to pick on you some more and ask you a little bit about your keynote and maybe tell us a little bit about what's going on in the world of Cilium.
Yeah, so my keynote was about mutual authentication at CiliumCon on the co-located days. And mutual authentication is a new feature that's been rolled out in Cilium 1.14. And it pretty much is encapsulating the handshake part of TLS. So it's exciting because now you have like the handshake part and the chain of trust being established between two parties with an identity leveraging Spire. So I tried doing actually a live demo, but then unfortunately it didn't work. So that's kind of, it was funny, but I had screenshots. So that was a backup and it was all good. But it's very cool because now you can see like how Cilium originally as CNI is now pushing up to more of like taking some of the functionalities that you want to see in a service mesh and like plugging it in certain areas. And then we also have a lot of development around the gateway API. So Cilium as a project, like initially, even though it was just like considered a CNI at the L3, L4 layer with network policies, it's now like pushing up the stack towards the L7 side of things. We can already do like some L7 manipulation. And like you can also do Istio and Cilium together, which is a nice story. But yeah, Cilium overall has been such a hot topic. And like, to be fair, I work at Isovalent as well. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's developing around not only eBPF, but Cilium and like abstracting away eBPF so you don't have to necessarily touch the tools. Also, like shameless plug, there's like an eBPF documentary too that was released, so you can find that on YouTube, and it's like a 30-minute watch. Would highly recommend if you want to feel inspired by tech and stuff.
That sounds really nerdy, and I'm excited for it.
I'm also trying to bring up Carlos, who was also at KubeCon. Hopefully, Carlos accepts these. Oh, there we go. Welcome, Carlos. Why don't you introduce yourself and share some of your experiences of KubeCon?
I suggest. Hi, I'm Carlos Santana. I'm a solutions architect with AWS and a CNCF ambassador. So I just saw this in my Twitter, so I just decided to join and share at least my experience of KubeCon, how I drive it. Like everybody drives their own way, and so what folks have been sharing so far. I don't want to repeat.
I mean, it's always nice to hear your perspective, but we did talk a little bit about some of the keynote stuff that showed up. We talked a little bit about platform engineering and IDPs and some of the AI magic that has made its way into the chat as well. But would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so in terms of KubeCon, at least I use KubeCon as my social, physical meeting of people, and I did terrible this KubeCon. I think I met half of the people that I wanted to meet in person. So for KubeCon Paris, I'm thinking if somebody wants to help out, like kind of build like a create a mobile app or a web page, like a scavenger hunt of like then you add the people beforehand or share a list and then meet with as many people as possible. So that's in terms of social, because a lot of the talks are going to be online, right? So you can get that information from online, but a lot of people say that, but there are like 600 talks. So that's another project I'm trying to do of kind of build a like chat GPT or a large language model of like typing something that I'm interested in, and then the thing will find the exact YouTube channel or the transcribe inside the YouTube to find and watch it. So it's a balance, right? You want to go to talks. Mainly, I go to talks for moral support of people that I know. I sit in the front row, so they know they feel less stressful, right? Having a familiar face, cheering for them. And then yeah, so I go to those type of talks. and then whole track to catch as many people as I can, and then ask to the people that went to the talks that maybe it's not doing the social thing like myself, asking them like what was the most interesting thing or the thing that they're hearing a lot. So the theme for this one out of the keynotes, I guess it was like developer experience, platform engineering, abstractions. ArgoCon was a good one. Some people claim that GitHub's ArgoCon or the Argo GUI is becoming like an abstraction on top of Kubernetes for a lot of developers and platform engineers that are using that GUI, but also Backstage. I heard a lot of things, good things about Backstage. But in terms of the experience of KubeCon, everybody makes their own journey. It depends if it's your first KubeCon versus if you're, for me, it's like the 7th, I think, or 8th, I don't know. So I think everybody will make it so far that. But if you don't go, don't feel bad because I went and I didn't see that many talks. I'm building a YouTube list. So you're not missing about the tech or anything like that. The keynotes, I'm going to double check. In the past, they were not posted on YouTube. And I talked to Chris, the CTO, and he agreed that they should be in YouTube. So that if you bought a ticket for the virtual platform, you can watch them for the next 30 days. So you can go in and watch the keynotes. They're very good. Like, at least if you're going to watch something, just watch the keynotes. That give you like a perspective of what are kind of like the trending things, which are not applicable in brownfield projects, but eventually has a potential to change some of the things that we do in the future. So I'll stop there to see if there's any questions or feedback or somebody disagrees. Because that's why we come to Twitter, right? To disagree. Like we never agree about anything.
Unfortunately, I agree.
It's actually to post thirst traps. Sorry, it's thirst traps and pictures of food.
That too. All right, let's start wrapping up. But before I do, I want to pass it to Kat because Kat wasn't at KubeCon, but I'm sure Kat has some questions around KubeCon. Is Kat around?
All right, you're putting me on the
I
spot.
am.
Okay, so I was also getting a big dose of AI in San Francisco during KubeCon, which is why I didn't go. I was attending the OpenAI Dev Day, so I am sure you guys were all perfectly cursed with plenty of AI as KubeCon as well. I heard at least rumors that you were. I'm curious what kind of AI stuff was actually happening at KubeCon. So did anyone witness it? Did anyone groan and roll their eyes and say, not this again?
I mean, I just heard that OpenAI launched their own GPT stuff or whatever that people can customize and do some stuff. Personally, I didn't see a lot of AI in your face at KubeCon. That's just me. Maybe I wasn't paying
Okay.
attention.
I was half expecting some ML Flow or some Kate's GPT or
No,
who knows
I
what
think I
in
had
there.
blinders on when I went into KubeCon. Neela, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, the only thing I really remember is a talk from Rejects, and that's online already. And I think that was Daniel from New Relic. He outlined how to use OpenTelemetry to observe actually language models, and I found this was super interesting. So he definitely nailed it to a point, why we need to observe them, and also how it can be very beneficial. And it was less of this like, oh, we just have to bring AI into every topic. That was really not the case in that talk. So I really enjoyed it.
Yes, that's Daniel Kim from New Relic. Awesome dude. Awesome dude. Thanks for sharing that, Neela. All right, let's start wrapping up. And actually, I'm going to ask two questions, and we'll wrap up that way. So, my first question is, what's your one key takeaway from this last KubeCon? And the second question is, what are you looking forward to in Paris, KubeCon Paris? And we'll start with Neela.
Oh, that's mean. I had no time to think about it. So the one takeaway is a lot of inspiration, I would say. And in Paris, I hope I have transformed some of the inspiration into code and then share more and also, again, take away more inspiration afterwards.
What about Paris?
What about Paris? Yeah, so that what I hope for, right? That was the question.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I think I hope or I wish and I'm excited to see how open telemetry will shape until then, because I think from now what I see, it has a huge acceleration in what it does. So I'm definitely looking forward at what state it will be when we are all in Paris.
Are you going to talk about Sig Train?
Oh, good. Good that you bring that up. Yeah, actually, that's also something I'm really looking forward to. So if you are based in Europe, we try to organize from different cities in Europe train journeys to Paris, so to reduce the CO2 footprint, and everyone can join that. We have a Slack channel in the CNCF space called KubeCon. So if you want to join the initiative, you can just jump into the channel. And if you want to see which cities already sell tickets, there is also a webpage, cubetrain.io, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, would be fun to see a lot of people traveling with the train to Paris, actually.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Adriana.
So for me, I guess biggest takeaway from KubeCon is always like the community and getting to like chat with people, get new perspectives on things. I spent a lot of time at the Open Telemetry Observatory. It was a booth sponsored by the Splunk folks, and it was quite nice and cozy. We had a bunch of open telemetry contributors and practitioners like congregate there to talk about all things open telemetry, which was super cool. So I hope we'll have something similar in Paris, and that I can connect with more folks in the open telemetry community, and looking forward to have like continue the nerdy conversations about observability and how I can fit it into other aspects of the cloud native world.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Adriana. All right, Boo, why don't you share your takeaways and what you look forward to in Paris?
Yeah, so I think this being my first KubeCon, really understanding all the things that surround KubeCon. So I was able to go to things like SigBoba, and hopefully Canal starts up Signon soon as well. But also things like Rejects and the Colo events. I looked at them before and I thought they looked interesting, and then I already booked my travel and stuff, and then getting closer and closer to the event, I saw all the cool stuff that was going to be happening there, and it was just too late to change stuff. So next time around, totally gonna have a broader look at things and figure out what my week looks like. And then yeah, for Paris, I got to figure out if I'll get some T&E for that and actually be able to go.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to some of those additional after events or after parties that don't necessarily involve alcohol. Kunal does a great job of finding a fantastic Indian restaurant. We always have a great time. So I definitely want to see some more of that. Christine, why don't you share some of your takeaways from KubeCon and what you look forward to in Paris?
Takeaways. Use your own hotspot if you're going to do a live demo. What else? And then for Paris, I guess, is going to be more go to like the contributors summit. It was kind of unfortunate that they were running the same time during the co-located event. So it's like you can't be in two places at once. I wish I was in the contributors summit though. And also just like staying in tuned with the Slack channels to make sure that you know when the office hours for certain SIG groups are happening. I think that's really useful. I wasn't really paying attention on Slack that much because I only have like some notifications rolling through. But yeah, definitely leveraging the tools that we have around KubeCon for sure.
Awesome, awesome. Kat, I'm not going to ask you that, but I do have a question for you about Pulumi and what they were doing at KubeCon. So would you be able to maybe give some perspective of what I was trying to bring up Engin. Engin's not accepting my speaker invite, so maybe you can share maybe some of the things you know that happened with Pulumi at KubeCon.
Oh no, yeah, I was hoping that Engen would come up and talk about that too. Um, I know that Pulumi was super excited to just start sharing out some of our newly released stuff, but not to turn this into a commercial. So yeah, I don't have all of the info from that one yet. The meeting that I would have got it from was yesterday while I was putting on a webinar.
And Engin finally enters the chat. All right, Engin, you're up.
I'm so sorry, but I had my team meeting and then another meeting, so I just had you on one ear and listening on the other ear. My team meeting. Kat, please don't tell this in the company.
Oh, that's our job, Enkin. You're just rocking it.
I just did it to stuff. So yeah, from I don't want to make now an advertising pitch about what we do with Pulumi, for example. So Marino, what was your question exactly?
You know, I'm going to give you the floor for the next 5 to 10 minutes because, Engin, you spent a lot of time doing more things than anyone I know at KubeCon. You were at KubeCon, but then you went and had some delicious food outside of KubeCon. I mean, we joined you, I think, one of those days, and we had some amazing hot Italian beef sandwich. But, I really want to hear, like, your experience. Summarize it in 10 minutes. You got to go. Let's go.
I mean, I can mention this every time, and all of you also mentioned this. What I could hear is that you should go to a KubeCon once in your career to say, okay, is it something for me or is it maybe not something for me? I found it always great, but then on the other hand, sometimes it can be very overwhelming, tiring, talking. So my social battery drained sometimes very, very quickly. So what I always preferred is I have the hotel for me. I'm not looking forward to be in a hotel with everybody else. I choose something. So my hotel was a little bit further away, but it gives me the energy when I drive up to the venue place. I'm alone in the train. I can just recharge and think about what I saw and make some plans. That was something which helped me a lot to have this safe space if I want to be alone. I did this now since 2 KubeCons. Before I was also more central with the people, and you maybe you just want to sleep earlier and so on. So that was one thing, and the venue itself, I love the colo events. I honestly love the colo events because they are a little bit, how do you say this, feels more natural currently because there are more diverse talks in, and you have the feeling, okay, there are also some talks which you may say, okay, they would never make it into the main event because the competition is so hard. So I really like them, and I like the way that now with the all season pass you can jump also. So I did the morning, I did the backstage con, and in the evening I alternated between the Argo con and the app developer con, which was also very, very nice. And I love this, that you can really make your a la carte menu of talks you want to see. There are less people. It's a little bit more possible to talk with people, and also packed with interesting stuff. So the colos was for me, again, something it was worth to pay the money and to join. And as the other people also said, the main event, I was mainly in the exhibition area and could not watch the talks. But what I did now is, thanks to Carlos for sharing also the link, is watch some of the live streams and of the talks. As everybody, I had a list, and I go now piece by piece through and check some of the talks I missed and I wanted to see. So that's one thing. And the other part is the talking part when you're in the exhibition area is really, really great. But I wished like more end users or more non-company people would approach and talk. So sometimes I feel there's still a gap between the people at the booth working in the companies and so on, and some end users. So I really looked forward that some people would just randomly talk and ask, approach you and so on. It happens sometimes, but I'm looking more in Paris to engage more into this kind of talks and include more people into discussions, because that was something. I don't know how you experienced this, but I need more feedback from the community, from our users. That's something. And the food was bad. Sorry, I have to mention this. If somebody from the CNCF is here, I'm so sorry. I don't want to bash you folks. And I know that everybody starts now, it's not that difficult. It's to organize for these people. Honestly, it's still bad, the food. So if you go to a KubeCon, be prepared either to lower your standards or just go somewhere else to eat. So I try to always to go somewhere else, because I don't like to throw food away. And I felt so sorry when I accidentally tried it out and I had it literally throw away a whole bread. And my parents, they taught me, you can do whatever you want, but you don't throw bread into the garbage. And I looked into the garbage can, it was full of half-eaten stuff. So I'm not sure, if this is something we should do, while in other parts of the world, people really struggle to meet the needs. So this is something I highly encourage, to look how we can find a solution about the food situation. I don't know. So that's me rambling around KubeCon.
Thanks so much, Engen. You bring up, some very valuable points around food wastage. I'll be honest, I'm guilty for wasting a little bit of that food as well. And I can't truly defend it, but you're right. Like, the food is not the best at these conferences for the amount of money that comes in for each of those tickets, as well as like through sponsorships. And the reality is, not everyone that goes to these conferences can afford to leave the conference to go find some food. So that's what they're left with. They're left with conference food. Others have that capability. They can leave and go eat. But that shouldn't dissuade anyone from attending a KubeCon or any of the Colo events, because there's still fantastic events where you get to connect with folks and meet with them and learn from them. Before I continue, I'll pass it along to Carlos. And Carlos, maybe you could also share some of your own takeaways and what you look forward to in KubeCon Paris.
Right, sure. So I wanted to, now that Engines mentioned the co-located events, I realized that, at least for me, what's happening is the co-located events are done. They're like a mini conference. So if you're interested in that topic, or you want to get better, or you want to know like what is the latest thing in the most efficient way, then the colo event, and also meeting the people that want to have that conversation. Then if you go to Istio, you'll be talking about half a day or full day, like immersed into Istio or Argo or GitOps. If I go to a talk of the main track, I will go to a random room, be there for 1 hour. When I leave the room, everybody rush to the next talk, and I don't have anyone to talk to or like interested really on that topic or that aspect. So I think the co-located events are becoming kind of a trend, and I'll bring that feedback to the CNCF, that the KubeCon is becoming, or it should become, like mini conferences, but and not to stop doing the co-located, I invest more in the co-located events, because I think they're becoming like their own little cohorts. I just realized that when Engine said that, of like, if you want to network and find people that are interested in the topic on that technology, then don't miss the colo event. If you go to the other ones, you may go to one talk and then not find anyone in the whole track because everybody leaves. So that's for what Angie said. In Paris, I'm looking forward to food. Same thing as Engine, like Europe. For some reason, Europe food is better. Hopefully, the CNCF organization doesn't disappoint with the food inside the venue, or they come up with an idea of like, even I'm willing to pay if there's something close and it's fast. So maybe have I don't know, in the US we call it like food trucks, but I have like kiosk from local restaurant or local folks that you just buy something, right? I have a bunch of them instead of have like everybody gets a sandwich. Anyway, I'm never ranting there. So the food, and then when Boone says, I haven't booked my hotel, which I very bad at that. I haven't booked my flight, but I'm going to do it, trying to get there on Friday to see if I can make it to rejects, because I was getting FOMO, really FOMO for rejects this time, and we're already booked on it. So that will be kind of another colo event of a cohort. So I'll stop there. So that's my insight.
Fantastic, Carlos. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll end and I'll just say my takeaways from this event is that every time I walk away from a KubeCon, I start to realize that there are more opportunities to collaborate with wonderful folks out there that know other things I don't know. And the fun challenge is trying to piece those different pieces together, like trying to stitch everything together to make it all work and then come up with a new talk. So I'm sitting there thinking, next year, all of those talks, all those CFPs that I want to submit shouldn't just be me on stage. It should be me and someone else in an adjacent technology space, right? And that's so much more powerful when you think about it. And I know Carlos is over there agreeing, because you're ultimately driving towards elements of platform engineering. You're co-engineering multiple solutions together. You're working through interoperability challenges. And people need to see that. People want to see that, because ultimately it navigates them towards enterprise solutions. I mean, people will ultimately go towards that solution that makes sense for them, and you just need to show them, how hard it can be doing it yourself. So that's one of those key takeaways that I picked up from KubeCon, and I'll always pick that up from KubeCon. There's some brilliant people here in this space that didn't come up. There's people here on this panel that shared so much wonderful information that makes me think, hey, we need to start thinking about some joint talks together. For Paris, I agree. The food's got to be way better. If not, I'm going to be loading up on croissants, and those croissants are fantastic. And I'm okay with that. I'm totally fine with that. Um, and if you're there too, I hope we all get to connect and grab some dinner together. Now, if you're trying to figure out how you can get to KubeCon, right, in Paris, it's going to be easier if you're much more local to the venue, to the event, because your travel costs are probably going to be minimal. If you're further away, KubeCon offers up scholarships for travel, so that helps you get there, pays for some of your travel and your lodging as well. And then talks as well. If you submit a talk, right, and you get accepted, you can request funding for travel as well. In the case that your employer doesn't cover it, in the case that you are independent, in the case that you're trying to network with people and find your way in cloud native or in the Kubernetes space, that's available to you too, right? I mean, everyone has that opportunity. I think, Boo said it best in one of the tweets here, let's do a space on how to submit CFPs. Because I think that's important too. Some of us are artists. I'm not the artist here, but I know some of y'all are, and can put together some killer CFPs that get accepted. And I think that knowledge is valuable to share. So we'll get to that too. But anyways, I want to thank everyone for coming by and listening into this KubeCon recap. I want to thank all these speakers here who showed up. Please follow them. Some were here, some have left. If you go back and catch the recording, you could see who was here and see what they shared as well. And I also want to thank Akansha and Kat for co-hosting with me. And, we'll do these spaces again. We do other spaces talking about a wide array of technologies. So I hope to see you all here again. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great evening. Have a great night, wherever you are.